Evan Montgomery adjusted the translator device at his collar as he stepped off the shuttle, his gaze sweeping over the welcoming party that awaited him on Thalassa. The air was crisp, filled with a hint of ozone that reminded him of the smell just after a rainstorm on Earth. His team, all specialists in their fields, shuffled behind him with a mix of excitement and apprehension. "Remember, everyone, first impressions are key," Evan instructed, turning to face his colleagues. His second-in-command, Dr. Jonas Clark, a seasoned anthropologist, nodded in agreement. As they approached, a Thalassan delegate stepped forward. Her skin shimmered with a subtle iridescence under the planet's twin suns, her eyes wide and inquisitively set on the humans. She was flanked by two others, equally majestic. "Greetings, I am Mira," she said, her voice resonating through the translator with a melodic tone. "Welcome to Thalassa." Evan smiled, extending his hand, a gesture he hoped would translate well. "I'm Evan Montgomery, and this is Dr. Jonas Clark. We are honored to be here." Mira tilted her head, observing the offered hand before mimicking the gesture. Her hand was cool and smooth, the contact brief but significant. "This is Lyros and Senna," Mira introduced her companions. Lyros, a tall figure with a stern expression, gave a curt nod. Senna, who carried a stack of data pads, offered a warm smile that seemed to soften the formal atmosphere. "We have prepared a meeting place for our discussions," Mira continued, guiding them toward a large structure that resembled a pavilion made of living coral. "We hope to learn much from each other." As they walked, Evan noticed the curious glances from other Thalassans. The city was a blend of natural beauty and technology, with bioluminescent plants lighting the pathways and buildings that spiraled gracefully towards the sky. Jonas leaned in, whispering, "Their architecture is fascinating. It's like they've grown their city out of the very ocean." Evan nodded, his mind racing with questions about their construction methods and materials. "Mira, the design of your city is incredible. How did you develop this style?" "It evolved with us," Mira explained. "Our buildings are alive, part of our ecosystem. We found harmony in adapting our structures to our environment rather than imposing upon it." Their group reached the meeting pavilion, where a circular table was set with what looked like refreshments. Mira gestured for them to sit. "As is our custom, let us share a meal before we proceed. It is a way to build trust and rapport," she said, presenting dishes that looked both intriguing and unidentifiable to the human guests. Evan sampled a dish that reminded him of seaweed, its taste surprisingly earthy and rich. "This is delicious," he remarked, noticing Senna's pleased reaction. "Yes, it is harvested from the coralline sea nearby," Senna responded. "We value our planet's resources. Sustainability is crucial for us." As the meal continued, the conversation flowed from cultural exchanges to the purpose of their mission. Evan was keen on documenting everything, knowing that every bit of information was crucial for their reports back home. "I hope that during our time together, we can explore all possibilities for knowledge exchange," Evan said earnestly. "We have much to learn from each other." Mira nodded, her expression thoughtful. "And perhaps in learning, we find not just knowledge but understanding. That is the true journey, is it not?" Evan agreed, feeling the weight of their responsibility, not just to their own people, but to the budding relationship with this new civilization. As the Thalassan moons began to rise, casting a soft glow over the pavilion, he felt a sense of anticipation. This was the beginning of something monumental. In the days that followed, Evan Montgomery and his team worked closely with Mira and her colleagues to develop a foundational understanding of each other's languages and customs. The task was monumental, yet the progress was tangible. In a spacious room filled with holographic displays of linguistic structures, Evan and Dr. Jonas Clark sat across from Mira and Lyros, immersed in a deep linguistic session. "Your language has a fluidity to it that mirrors your environment," Evan observed, pointing to a hologram that depicted the swirling syntax and structure of Thalassan speech. Lyros, who had initially been reserved, now engaged more openly. "Yes, our speech is like the currents of the ocean. It flows, it changes, and it adapts depending on the context and the speaker." Jonas, always fascinated by cultural symbolism, chimed in, "It's much like your architecture, then? Adapting and evolving with the needs of the speakers?" "Exactly," Mira replied with a nod. Our communication and living spaces are extensions of ourselves, dynamic and interconnected. Evan, intrigued, asked, could you explain how you use tone and context together? For example, in this phrase here, he said, highlighting a sentence on the display. Mira leaned forward, her expression focused as she elaborated. This phrase can mean welcome or harmony, depending on the pitch. The higher tone signals a greeting, while a softer, lower tone conveys a deeper, communal connection. That's fascinating, Evan noted, typing notes into his data pad. In human languages, context is key, but we rarely use tone in such a nuanced way. As the session progressed, Senna brought in refreshments and joined the discussion. She was keen on understanding human expressions, often asking about the nuances of emotions conveyed through language. So, when you say something is cool, you could be referring to temperature, or is it an expression of approval? Senna asked, genuinely curious. Evan chuckled, yes, it's mostly slang for something we find good or impressive. Language isn't just about survival for us, it's also about expression and sometimes fun. I see, Senna mused. Thalassin has its playful aspects too. We often use water and ocean metaphors to express joy and playfulness. The session turned into an exchange of idioms and phrases where each tried to find equivalents or explanations in their own tongue. Laughter filled the room as misinterpretations led to amusing confusions. Jonas, looking at a complex diagram of Thalassin sentence structure, wondered aloud, how do you construct a sentence when you want to emphasize something important? Lyros explained, we repeat the verb at the end of the sentence, but in a whisper. It's a way to highlight the action softly but significantly. Human languages sometimes use repetition for emphasis too, but it's more direct, Jonas replied, fascinated by the gentle intricacy of Thalassin speech. As the day wound down, Evan felt a deep sense of accomplishment. Not only were they bridging linguistic gaps, but they were also weaving a tapestry of mutual understanding and respect. Before they parted, Evan asked, Mira, would you teach us one of your traditional gestures of friendship? I think it would be a beautiful symbol of our progress today. Mira smiled warmly, standing to demonstrate. We place our hands over our hearts, then extend them forward, palms up, to the person we wish to honor. She performed the gesture, and one by one, each human and Thalassin reciprocated. Evan felt the weight of the gesture, his heart full. We are honored to learn from you and hope to extend this friendship far beyond words. As they replicated the gesture, there was a shared feeling of unity, a silent acknowledgement that despite coming from worlds apart, they were not so different after all. After several days of intense linguistic and cultural exchanges, Evan proposed a more casual gathering to share an Earth tradition. I'd like to invite you all to a dinner under the night sky. It's a way we humans enjoy nature and company, he explained to Mira and her team during their morning meeting. Mira was intrigued. A night meal, outdoors? We have similar customs, especially during the long nights of Lunara. We shall prepare a place by the Harmonic Sea. It is a beautiful spot where the sky touches the water. That evening, Evan, Dr. Jonas Clark, and the rest of the human team met with Mira, Lyros, and several other Thalassins at the designated seaside spot. The Thalassins had arranged for luminous stones to light the area with a soft, ethereal glow that reflected off the gentle waves. Jonas, who had been eager to experience more Thalassin culture firsthand, was the first to speak. This setting is breathtaking, Mira. Thank you for this. It is our pleasure, Dr. Clark, Mira responded with a smile. Sharing our beauties enhances their value. As everyone settled around a large, low table filled with an array of Thalassin and human dishes, Evan initiated a toast. To new friends and new worlds, he said, raising his glass filled with a light, fruity Thalassin beverage. To shared skies and shared waters, Mira added, her glass chiming against Evan's. The meal progressed with lively discussions about each dish. Evan introduced a savory earth dish he had prepared earlier with the ship's synthesizer, hoping it would suit Thalassin palates. Mira and Lyros sampled it curiously, exchanging glances. It has complexity, Lyros commented thoughtfully. Is this a common meal for your people? It's called ratatouille, Evan explained. It's a dish from a region on Earth called Province. It's made with vegetables that we grow during the summer months. Fascinating, Mira mused. We have a dish vealer, made from sea plants only harvested at full moon. It shares a similar spirit, celebrating the season's bounty. The conversation then turned to music, an integral part of both human and Thalassan culture. Senna, a young Thalassan musician, had brought an instrument that resembled a harp but emitted sounds like flowing water. Would you play something for us? Jonas asked. Senna nodded and began to play. The music was unlike anything the humans had heard, full of intricate harmonies that seemed to mimic the natural sounds of their surroundings. Evan was deeply moved. It's beautiful, Senna. It feels like listening to the ocean itself. Music is the voice of our world, Senna replied, her fingers deftly moving over the strings. It tells stories of the deep and the skies. Inspired by the setting and the music, Evan suggested, perhaps we could share a dance? On Earth, it's another form of expression and connection. Mira accepted the invitation, and they stood, joining hands in a circle. Evan taught them a simple human dance, guiding their steps under the light of Thalassan moons. The dance was clumsy at first, with everyone laughing at their missteps, but soon, they moved in a harmonious circle, each step more confident. As the evening drew to a close, Lyros, who had been mostly observant, finally spoke up. This gathering, it's been enlightening. We see now how deeply your traditions are woven into who you are. And we've seen the same in you, Evan replied, feeling a connection that had grown stronger under the shared light of the moons. Perhaps our worlds aren't so different after all. With a gentle breeze carrying the salty scent of the sea, the group continued talking long into the night, each moment strengthening the bonds they had begun to forge. The following day, as a token of gratitude for the night spent under the Thalassan moons, Mira invited Evan and his team to a traditional Thalassan festival known as the Luminous Gathering. It was an event that celebrated the longest day of the year, marked by dancing, music, and an array of visual displays. Evan, Dr. Jonas Clark, and the rest of the human crew arrived at the festival grounds where the air buzzed with excitement and the scent of exotic spices. Mira greeted them with her usual warm smile. Tonight, you will join us in one of our oldest traditions, she explained. The dance of the Luminaris is not just a dance. It's a way of telling stories and connecting spirits. Jonas, ever curious about alien cultures, was the first to ask, what kind of stories do these dances tell? They speak of our history, our dreams, and the cycles of the seas and stars, Lyros, who had accompanied Mira, added. Each movement has meaning, and together, they weave a narrative. As the suns began to set, the festival grounds came alive with light. Bioluminescent decorations hung from every corner, casting a surreal glow that made the entire scene look like a living, breathing painting. Senna approached the group, holding traditional Thalassan garments. To fully participate, you must wear these. They will help you move with the right flow and feel the dance more deeply. Evan and Jonas, along with their team, changed into the garments, which felt light and airy, almost like a second skin. They joined Mira and her colleagues at the center of the festival area where other Thalassans had started to gather. First, we watch, Mira instructed as a group of expert dancers took to the open space. The music began, a complex composition of sounds that mimicked the natural world. The dancers moved with grace and precision, their bodies telling tales of creation, conflict, and harmony. After the performance, it was their turn. Mira stood next to Evan, offering him a reassuring smile. Now, follow my lead. The music started again, slower this time, and Mira guided Evan through the basic steps. The movements were fluid, mimicking the ebb and flow of water. Evan found himself getting lost in the rhythm, his body syncing with Mira's as if they were part of the same tide. Jonas danced alongside Senna, both laughing as they tried to mimic the Thalassan fluidity. It's like trying to dance with the ocean itself, Jonas exclaimed. Yes, but you are learning fast, Senna replied, her eyes sparkling with amusement. As they continued, Evan felt a connection not just to Mira but to the world around him. The dance, the music, and the night created a sense of unity, a feeling that they were all part of something greater. Each turn, each lift, it's beautiful, Evan said, breathless from the exertion and excitement. Mira nodded, her eyes reflecting the festival lights. It's more than just tradition. It's a celebration of life, of our planet, and now, of our new friends. The dance ended with a final, dramatic crescendo of music, and the crowd erupted in applause. Evan and his team bowed, overwhelmed by the warmth and cheer from the Thalassans. Lyros approached them, his earlier reserve gone, replaced by a broad smile. You have honored us with your willingness to learn and participate. This is the beginning of a true understanding between our people. As the festival continued into the night, with more dances and shared stories, Evan felt a profound sense of accomplishment. They had come to Thalassa as diplomats and scientists, but tonight, they were simply friends among friends, learning and laughing together under the alien stars. In the weeks following the Luminous Gathering, the bond between the humans and Thalassans deepened. Evan Montgomery and Mira continued to work closely, their joint project nearing completion. It was during these final stages that Evan realized just how much he had come to value Mira's insight and presence. One evening, after a particularly successful day of integration between their technologies, Evan invited Mira for a walk along the shores of the Harmonic Sea. The twin moons of Thalassa were bright in the sky, casting a shimmering light over the water. Mira, I've been meaning to ask, Evan began, his voice thoughtful as they walked. What will happen once our project is completed? Will there be other collaborations? Mira looked at the glowing sea, her expression contemplative. I hope so, Evan. This partnership has been beneficial for both our people. I believe we've only scratched the surface of what we can achieve together. Evan nodded, feeling a mixture of satisfaction and melancholy at the prospect of the project ending. I feel the same. I've learned so much from you, not just about your technology, but about your culture and values. As they continued walking, Mira suddenly stopped and faced him. Evan, there is something personal I wish to share, she said, her voice carrying a new, unfamiliar tension. Of course, Mira. What is it? Evan asked, his curiosity piqued. It's about the Night of Reflection, Mira explained. It's an important Thalassan tradition where we contemplate our connections with others. I would like you to join me for it tomorrow night. Evan was honored. I'd be grateful to be a part of that, Mira. Thank you for inviting me. The next evening, Evan met Mira at a secluded cove, where the water was still and the air was filled with the sweet scent of nocturnal flowers. Mira had arranged a small, comfortable space with cushions on the sand. They sat close, facing the serene water. Mira, what should I expect tonight? Evan asked, eager to understand the significance of the ceremony. Tonight is about sharing, Mira began, her voice soft but clear in the quiet night. We share our thoughts, our hopes, and our fears. It's a time to speak truthfully and listen deeply. Evan listened intently as Mira shared stories of her ancestors, the history of Thalassa, and her personal dreams for her planet's future. When it was his turn, Evan spoke of Earth, his family, and his experiences, both the joys and the challenges. As the night deepened, they spoke of less tangible things, feelings and subtle intuitions about their worlds. It was during these moments that Evan felt a profound connection to Mira, bridging the gap not only between cultures, but between hearts. Mira, Evan said, moved by the intensity of the conversation. This is unlike anything I've ever experienced. I feel as though I've come to know you, and myself, much better. Mira reached out, placing her hand gently over his. And you, Evan. It's rare to find such understanding with someone from another world. Their conversation lingered until the early hours of the morning, each topic drawing them closer. As they prepared to leave the cove, Evan felt a sense of clarity about his feelings. Mira, tonight was incredible. Thank you for sharing this part of your world with me, he said sincerely. And thank you, Evan, for embracing it with an open heart, Mira replied, her eyes reflecting the moonlight. They walked back in comfortable silence, knowing that something significant had shifted between them. As they parted ways at the edge of the beach, the promise of tomorrow hung in the air, filled with potential and new beginnings. After the night of reflection, Evan Montgomery and Mira found themselves increasingly drawn to each other. Their professional meetings often stretched longer, blending seamlessly into discussions about beliefs, aspirations, and the universe. One late afternoon, as they concluded reviewing the data from their latest collaborative experiment, Mira turned to Evan with a hesitant expression. "Evan, I have been thinking," Mira started, pausing as if searching for the right words. "Our project is nearly complete. What if this is the end of our collaboration?" Evan felt a twinge of anxiety at the thought, his mind racing with possibilities. "I've been thinking about that too," he confessed. "I don't want this to end. Not the project, not us." Mira smiled softly, her eyes meeting his. "Nor do I. But what are we to do? Our worlds are so vastly apart." Evan took a deep breath, his decision clear in his mind. "What if they didn't have to be? What if I stayed here, on Thalassa, with you?" The suggestion hung in the air, heavy with implications. Mira looked at him, surprise and uncertainty crossing her features. "Stay here? Evan, are you sure? What about your life on Earth?" "I've been thinking about it a lot," Evan replied earnestly. "My life is about exploration and understanding. What better way to embody that than to fully immerse myself in a new world? Besides," he added, his voice softening, "I can't imagine being anywhere else now. Not without you." Mira took a moment to process his words, her gaze drifting towards the window overlooking the ocean. The setting sun cast a golden glow, illuminating her face in warm light. "Evan, your words mean more to me than you can know. But it's a huge step. You would be leaving everything behind. I know, but I think it's worth it. What we have, it's worth it. And it's not just about us. Think about the bridge we could build between our people." Mira nodded slowly, her decision forming. "Let me think about it overnight. This is big, Evan." Of course, Evan agreed, giving her the space she needed. The next morning, Mira sought Evan out, finding him by the shoreline, watching the waves crash against the rocks. He turned as he heard her approach, his heart beating faster. "I thought about what you said," Mira began, her voice steady, "and I realized that you're right. What we have started here shouldn't end just because the project does. Evan, if you are willing to stay, I would be honored to continue this journey with you." Evan's relief was palpable, and he stepped closer, taking her hands in his. "I am more than willing, Mira. This is where I want to be." As they stood there, hands linked, the future seemed filled with possibilities. They talked about plans, about how Evan would integrate into Thalassan society, and how they would continue their collaboration, not just professionally but personally as well. "We'll need to talk to the Earth delegation and the Thalassan Council," Mira pointed out. "There will be formalities, protocols to follow." "I'll handle the delegation from Earth," Evan said. "I think they'll understand. After all, isn't this what our mission was all about? To not only discover new worlds, but to connect with them on a deeper level." Mira laughed, the sound mingling with the rush of the waves. "Yes, that was the mission. And look how wonderfully we've succeeded." Together, they walked back towards the facility, their steps light, their hearts full. The challenges ahead seemed manageable, dwarfed by the strength of their newfound bond. For Evan, Thalassa wasn't just a new world anymore. It was his new home. The following weeks were a whirlwind of discussions, negotiations, and preparations. Evan Montgomery took the lead in communicating his decision to stay on Thalassa to the Earth delegation. Meanwhile, Mira liaised with the Thalassan Council to facilitate Evan's integration into their society. One afternoon, they sat together in a quiet garden, going over their plans. "Mira, the Earth Council was surprisingly supportive," Evan shared, scrolling through messages on his device. "They believe this could set a precedent for future interstellar relations." "That's encouraging," Mira replied, looking relieved. "The Thalassan Council has its reservations, but they are open to the idea, especially given how successful our collaboration has been." Evan nodded, his mind racing with the logistics of his decision. "There's a lot to consider: cultural integration, contributions to your society, even something as basic as where I'll live." Mira smiled gently. "You'll live with me if you want, at least until you decide otherwise. As for your contributions, you have skills that are valuable here, Evan. Your knowledge of human technology and languages will be invaluable as we expand our understanding of the universe." Their conversation was interrupted by the arrival of Dr. Jonas Clark, who approached with his usual brisk pace. Evan, Mira, I've been talking to some of the engineers about the technology exchange. They're keen to learn more about human engineering techniques. That's great, Jonas, Evan said, standing to greet his friend. I was just discussing with Mira about how I can be of service here. Jonas nodded, his face serious. You're really doing this, huh? Staying here? Evan looked at Mira, then back at Jonas. Yes, I am. This feels right, Jonas. Well, I'll miss having you around on Earth, but I think what you're doing is important. Count me in to help however I can, Jonas offered, clapping Evan on the shoulder. Thank you, Jonas. Your support means a lot, Evan replied, grateful for his friend's understanding. As the days passed, Evan began his transition into Thalassan society. He attended cultural and linguistic sessions, participated in community activities, and even started working on a project to develop a hybrid energy system combining human and Thalassan technologies. One evening, as Evan and Mira were walking back from a community meeting, Evan expressed some of his apprehensions. Do you think your people will really accept me, Mira? I know the council agreed, but what about everyone else? Mira took his hand, squeezing it reassuringly. It will take time, Evan, but they will see what I see. Your genuine desire to bridge our worlds and contribute to our society. Their integration efforts were soon put to the test when they attended a large public event celebrating a Thalassan harvest festival. Evan was nervous, but Mira stayed by his side, introducing him to her friends and colleagues. As they walked through the festival, a young Thalassan named Vara approached them. Evan, I heard about your project with our engineers. Can you tell me more about human energy technologies? Evan was more than happy to discuss his work, and soon a small crowd gathered to listen. Mira watched with pride as Evan confidently shared his knowledge, his enthusiasm infectious. Later that night, Mira and Evan sat watching the moons rise over the sea. You were amazing today, Mira said. Evan chuckled. I just talked about what I love. But it felt good, Mira. It felt like I was making a difference. You are, Mira assured him. Every day, you're helping to build something new here. Something good. As they leaned against each other, watching the sky change colors, they both knew that this was just the beginning. There would be challenges ahead, but together, they were ready to face them and forge a path not just for themselves but for their worlds. Months had passed since Evan Montgomery decided to make Thalassa his new home. The integration had been challenging yet rewarding, and as he and Mira walked towards the Thalassan Council building for a final review meeting, he reflected on the journey. Evan, today is significant, Mira said, her voice filled with a mixture of excitement and solemnity. The council will give their final approval for your residency and our ongoing projects. Are you ready? Evan nodded, feeling a surge of anticipation. I think I am. Thanks to you, I felt welcomed and valued here. As they entered the council chamber, a hushed reverence filled the air. The council members, including Lyros, who had become a staunch supporter, greeted them warmly. Evan Montgomery, Lyros began, his voice echoing slightly in the high-ceilinged room. You have shown great dedication to our world and our people. Your efforts in the energy project have not gone unnoticed. Today, we formalize your place among us. Evan took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the moment. Thank you, Lyros, and to all the council members. I am honored to be a part of your community. My only desire is to contribute to Thalassa's prosperity and to continue learning from all of you. The council members nodded, murmurs of approval rippling through the room. The formalities concluded swiftly, and Evan's new status was unanimously approved. After the meeting, a small celebration was held in the council's gardens. Dr. Jonas Clark, who had come to witness the occasion, clapped Evan on the back. You've really done it, Evan. You're a pioneer, in the truest sense. Evan smiled, looking around at the gathered Thalassans and humans. It feels right, Jonas. Like this was meant to be my path all along. As the party continued, Evan mingled with guests, discussing plans for future collaborations. The discussions were lively and full of potential, each conversation opening new doors for shared growth and understanding. Later, as the guests began to disperse, Evan found Mira looking out over the gardens, her expression thoughtful. He approached her, slipping his hand into hers. What are you thinking about? Evan asked gently. Mira turned to him, her smile soft but profound. I was just reflecting on how much has changed since we first met. We started as diplomats and scientists, and now, look at us, partners in every sense of the word. It's been an incredible journey, Evan agreed, his heart full. I used to think of my life in terms of chapters ending, but now I see it's more about new beginnings. Mira leaned her head against his shoulder. A new beginning, yes, and one we will write together. As the twin moons of Thalassa rose high in the sky, casting a serene glow over the gardens, Evan felt a deep peace settle over him. He was thousands of light years from where he was born, yet he had found a new home, a new family, and a new purpose. Looking at Mira, he felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude and love. Whatever challenges come next, I'm glad we'll face them together, he said. Mira squeezed his hand, her eyes reflecting the moonlight. Together, she affirmed, and that's the most beautiful beginning we could have. The night wrapped around them, the sounds of the garden and the distant city blending into a harmonious backdrop. For Evan, the farewell to his old life was complete, but the journey ahead was filled with bright new promises, waiting to be fulfilled under the watchful eyes of the Thalassan moons.